You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Welcome back to Music Tectonics, where we go beneath the surface of music and tech. I'm Eleanor Rust, Marketing Director at Rock Paper Scissors, the PR firm that specializes in music innovation and music technology. Music Tectonics is not just a podcast, it's also an annual music innovation conference. After 2 years online and hybrid, our 2022 conference will take place in person and face-to-face October 25th through 27th in Santa Monica, California. That's Los Angeles' neighbor by the beach. In the lead up to the event, we have a mini-series on the podcast on the stars of the 2022 Music Tectonics Conference. These folks are star music innovators in their own right, but they're also star sponsors of this year's edition of the conference. Our sponsors are big thinkers and future-focused movers and shakers. They sign on to sponsor in order to support the community that gathers at Music Tectonics. You'll get to meet them at the event, but for now, keep listening to get to know 2 of them. Today, Tristra Newyear-Yeager, Music Tectonics host and Director of Strategy at Rock Paper Scissors, will chat with Jamie Markinette to find out about Luminate, the preeminent entertainment data and insights company, and the big picture trends they're tracking in the music industry. But first, Tristra sits down with Jocelyn Say, the founder of Bridger, an independent rights management entity, to talk about the future of music licensing. Over to you, Tristra.
Bridger is an independent rights management entity that collects and distributes copyright royalties generated on music streaming services for songwriters. Bridger is a free service with no registration or annual fees, eliminating the usual administrative headaches of collecting royalties. Bridger's goal is to bring a copyright solution to all songwriters by making all processes easy and affordable. Welcome to the podcast, Jocelyn Say, the founder of Bridger. Thanks, Jocelyn, for joining us.
Hi, Tristra. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So you have a really varied career that spanned a number of sectors across at least 2 continents. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to create Bridger?
Yeah, sure. So I have a career which is not totally thought from the beginning, but I started in the music industry. I started as a music manager, as a manager of a French artist called Sébastien Tellier, a guy with a big beard. And fortunately enough, I could start this career by touring with him and the then well-known band called Air. And that
Wait,
was
Air?
Air.
Oh, yeah.
A-I-R,
Yeah. No.
Sexy Boy and Virgin Suicide.
Amazing. That's quite a band to start your career with.
Yeah. So that was a good introduction. And I've done that for 3 years. I followed my poulain, my artist, as we say in France, for 3 years. And then I moved to a different sector. I moved to fashion. In fact, I joined a group of people that were my friends, and we set up a fashion brand. We set up trade shows. We did many things. We launched the Vice magazine in France. And we made a series of collaborations with artists such as Kings of Leon, Kid Cudi, Kim Gordon from Sonic Youth, and many famous artists, in fact. And we were kind of good in making leather jackets for them.
Amazing.
Yeah. And after this period, I got back, so to say, to an audio/music world by joining the company called Radionomy as the CFO at the time. I was the chief financial officer of the company. We sold to Vivendi, the company that was owning Universal Music until recently. I guess they still own something of Universal Music. Then I moved to Brazil to do something totally different. I moved into the waste management in Brazil.
Wow. Got a little pivot there.
A little pivot, as you say. Which was very fulfilling, I would say, very interesting. And I stayed there for a couple of years. And then I moved back to Europe for family reasons. So I joined this group of companies that I was working for 2 to 3 years ago, and starting working for a company called Jamendo as the general manager of the company. And from then we started to see a need for independent artists to manage their copyright essentially online, because many independent artists now are starting online rather than not online. And we saw that there was a market here for us to be in, because many of those independent artists using digital distribution services didn't realize that they had to be affiliated to a copyright management organization or to a PRO to get their copyright when their music was streamed on streaming services mainly. We realized that, and we decided to create what is now Bridger. As you said in the introduction, Bridger is an independent management entity based in Luxembourg, working for with songwriters from any country. And our mission is to collect copyright when the music of those songwriters is streamed on all the digital platforms on Earth.
Yeah, what was the biggest problem you felt you needed to solve in order to support these independent artists and collecting globally? I mean, that's a huge mission. What is one of the key pieces in the puzzle that you felt you had to put together?
I guess what we say, our motto is simplicity. So one of the things we realized during the interview phase and talking with many songwriters from everywhere was that in many occasions it was complicated. The copyright concepts are complicated. It's not easy to navigate. They are different from one country to the other. They are different from one continent to the other. So it's not easy to understand. So that was one thing we wanted to help with. So improve the understanding meant bring as much knowledge as we could to this specific, let's say, category of songwriters by giving them definitions, by talking to them, by doing master classes, etc. And simple also means that you do not have to, you have no barriers when you start working with your copyright management organization. So we tried to lift any kind of entry barriers for those songwriters, such as a payment when you join the CMO.
So having to pay up front can be a big burden if you're an independent songwriter who's just on the emerging side.
As an independent artist, you're not very comfortable with how much money you will make from copyright, and generally speaking, copyright is less lucrative than master rights. So you may be reluctant to invest on your copyright when you already know that you're not making a lot of money on the master rights. So for us, it was clear that we should not charge anything for songwriters entering into this area. And what seemed important to us too is that no matter how small you are when you start, it's important that you are in the game, let's say from day one, because the more you wait, the more you may lose at some point, and it's hard to go backwards. I mean, there are backclaiming systems and all, but it's always better to be there from scratch. That was something we wanted to make sure was not an issue for songwriters.
That's great. So how would you describe this moment in time for innovation in music from your perspective? You can think about licensing or working with independent artists. What are some of the big trends and influences that are strongest in music licensing and in your work?
I think that one of the most clear patterns in the music industry, innovation in music itself, I don't know, but in the music industry is finance. I mean, that's very overwhelming. Finance is everywhere. It's one of the biggest tendencies in terms of buying copyright, as we saw with those actors such as Hypnosis, Roundhill, Primary Rev, etc., with huge financial funds funding them. And this is a tendency that goes down to pretty much everything in the music industry right now.
How does that trickle down from your perspective?
How does that trickle down? What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, how do these huge deals happening, sort of the 1% of big name artists affect independent artists or sort of mid-tier artists that are more middle class? How does that affect either their royalties or how they view their own work?
For me, it potentially has a good influence on copyright for everyone. What we've seen, I mean, online at least, is that master owners get the lion's share of the business. Thanks to the arrival of those financial actors, there's a pressure around publishing, around copyright, to have this balance rebalanced in favor of copyright owners, which is what we're working for. So I see, well, there's a good chance that the value for songwriters increases in the coming years. So I see that very positively, and we've seen that too in Europe, in the US, we're seeing the rates going up for songwriters, and I believe that's very positive, and I believe it's linked to this pressure of capital for the worse or the better.
Yeah, that's exciting,
on the music
though.
Industry. Yeah.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see in 5 years how that impacts songwriters and their careers and how they develop creatively. So there are a lot of emerging tech frontiers now, too. And we have, in addition to this very interesting financialization trend, we're seeing all sorts of new formats and venues and contexts where music is being used or performed, including places like the metaverse. And, huge hat tip to Vicky Nauman and some other thinkers who are already saying we need to be thinking about this. But Jocelyn, I also know this has been on your mind, so I'm curious how you're thinking about what we need to do to get ready for things like virtual reality, Web3, whatever we mean by that, the metaverse, etc. How are you thinking about all that?
Well, we see that's something we've been discussing quite a lot recently, I would say. We are clearly seeing that as a good opportunity for artists to make a living, to find other ways to express themselves, that's for sure. But in terms of an industry, what we're hoping is that it's an occasion for this development of the internet to avoid repeating the mistakes that have been made with Web 2 in a nutshell.
That's a dream, right?
By mistake, I mean forgetting licensing somehow.
Oops.
So making sure that the new actors are well aware that copyright also means copyright owners, and that there are a series of actions to take to make sure that you are licensed correctly. And what we've observed is that if you avoid licensing completely, again, it's a race of the strongest ones, of the wealthiest one, to win the battle, and they have such a power that they tend to make the deals to their benefit immediately. So if you want to make sure that you're not repeating that, Web3 in general should think about intellectual property from the beginning, because that's important, obviously.
Great. So speaking of the future, let's get a little sci-fi for a second here. When you imagine an ideal near future music industry, what do you see? And this doesn't necessarily have to do with licensing, but it could be, I really want to have an instrument that I can play like a laser gun, or I want to be able to listen to music while I dig in my garden. What are your dreams about music innovation in the near future?
I was thinking about what would be the future of music recently, looking also at all the climatic and course of the world events. Mm-hmm. And eventually, even though we're working in a very innovative world, even though we're working with technology a lot, because that's what we do when you collect copyright with digital services, you're essentially working with computer databases, metadata, etc. My sci-fi would be pretty much low tech, I would say.
That's good, though.
Coming back to very basic things. So well, very basic. I don't know if very basic, but I imagine the future as a sort of a comeback to what has been hoped by innovation, which is a direct link between artists and their audience, physically.
Yeah,
That's what I imagine.
Yeah, no, it's fun to think about. I mean, as we enter into this increasingly mediated environment, are we going to put a premium on unmediated experiences? Like we all go to the woods with an artist and listen to music completely unamplified. Like things like that intrigue me. Like, how will people? I think there's going to be a hunger for some things like that, as well as these fancy metaverse, totally immersive technologies.
Yeah, it goes along. In fact, I guess it pursues the same goal, except that at some point you may want to get back to something as crazy as reality.
There we go. It's sort of back to the sort of the organic food movement kind of thing, but for music.
Probably.
So just to wrap up this speed round, I'm wondering what you're hoping the Bridger team will get out of the Music Tectonics experience. What are you guys looking forward to at the conference?
Well, the quality of the persons that have participated to the event in the past makes us quite eager to go there. I think there's a good crowd of people from the industry, so I hope we'll be able to meet with lots of them in a friendly atmosphere. That's what I hope for.
We try to be friendly. We do our best. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jocelyn, for sharing your thoughts, and I can't wait to see you in Santa Monica.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks, Trista, and hope to see you soon.
Awesome, Tristra. Stick around after the break to meet Jamie Marconet, Senior Director of Music Insights and Industry Relations at Luminate.
See you in person at the Music Tectonics Conference. It's happening October 25th through 27th, 2022 by the beach in Santa Monica, California. We have a full 3 days of programming, networking, and carousel rides. So I want to tell you a little bit more about the panels that I've been working on. So I'm going to tell you about 2 of them. The first one is our Music Community Engagement panel. This is going to have speakers including Maria Garonis, who is Senior Partnerships Manager and oversees creators and artists at Reddit. She's also the CEO and founder of Cool Shit, Cool People. And we are also going to have Manny Toro, who is Global VP of Music Marketing at SoundCloud. Now, the next panel I want to tell you about is a panel about the metaverse. And I know I said we weren't going to have an oversaturation of Web3 at Music Tectonics this year, but come on, we have to have at least a few panels that touch on the topic. So, I present to you Music Rights in the Metaverse, a fireside chat with Michael Huppy, Sound Exchange's president. Here as he dives into issues around rights and payments in the metaverse and where he sees the path to move forward. So that's a little bit about the programming that's going to happen on the 26th. And now I want to tell you about some exciting things we have going on October 27th. So at Expert Dojo, the first event of the day, we are going to hear from our friends over at Media Research. We are going to have a presentation from Chris Thakrar and Tatiana Cirasano as they dive into the idea that music consumption is transitioning to become background music and what that means for the current economy and the industry as a whole. Then stay tuned for some exciting programming announcements for a closing event at the UMG offices in Santa Monica. You can get your picture taken by the big globe outside. Get your Music Tectonics conference badge at musictectonics.com.
Luminate is the preeminent entertainment data and insights company, unleashing access to the most essential, objective, and trustworthy information across music, film, and television, with data compiled from hundreds of verified sources. Today, the company maintains its more than 30-year legacy of accurate storytelling by powering the iconic Billboard music charts while also adding to the premier database for the television and film industries. If the name Luminate is not ringing a bell and is new to you, there's a reason for that. Their data and insights are still very familiar, and the company was formerly known as Nielsen Music and MRC Data. So today we have with us Jamie Marconet, who is Senior Director of Music Insights and Industry Relations at Luminate. Thanks so much for joining us, Jamie.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here talking with you today about this.
Yeah. Well, sadly, we're going to have a shorter conversation, but I think we could probably jam on this for hours. But let's start off by finding out a little bit more about your background, Jamie. How did you get into this role at Luminate, and what exactly do you do?
Sure. So I am, as you pointed out, Senior Director of Music Insights and Industry Relations at Luminate. I joined Luminate in May after spending 8.5 years with the Sony Music Nashville digital team, where I was using progressive digital and data marketing to power artist campaigns. So I was a digital lead for artists, but really used a lot of the data that was at my fingertips to craft these campaigns and then also look at consumers to build the most effective and engaging campaigns for my artists. So, as you pointed out, we at Luminate rebranded in March. We were PMRC Data before that, and then we obviously power the Billboard charts. Along with this, in my current role, we have over 500 first-party data sources for those efforts, which we make available to the industry. So that's coming from the DSPs, that's coming from other countries, that's coming from so many different sources. And what we're able to do with this is really, really look at the global trends. We're able to spotlight what's happening in different genres, different regions across the US, and then, as well, always, power back to the Billboard charts. And then we also have a market research arm, which goes out and polls consumers across the world to, kind of add that intent in that why to what we're seeing.
That's really helpful. And we were talking about this just a minute ago before we started recording. It's so handy to get another view into why people are doing what they're doing. And we can see what they're doing, but we really don't know why sometimes.
Definitely. And that's part of my role at Luminate as well. As the industry is drowning in data. And so part of my efforts is to is kind of a storyteller, really. And so I dig in on the data and the key insights to find the stories that's in the music data, and then also return them back to the music community with actionable insights that they can take and build strategies around.
That is a wonderful thing, actionable insights. So it's what we're all searching for. So I want to talk about one of your most recent releases to the music business community. You've been drawing on this sort of deep historical as well as very current, up-to-date data that you have, and really using that unique perspective to paint this bigger picture. So you put out a mid-year report not too long ago, and really honed in on some important trends that have marked at least the first half of 2022. So one of those stories really went a little wild, and a lot of people in the music business industry, music business trades, et cetera, were talking about it. And that's the role of catalog versus newer releases. But there were a lot of other insights in that report that maybe didn't get as much love and attention, but I thought were really noteworthy. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go to the bottom of the list of your report. I really want to talk a little bit with you today about your insight that music is global, but language matters. So from what I understand, you've started to really gather country-level data for 47 countries, and this gives you some interesting abilities to compare and contrast and see what is doing well and why in different markets. And you've come up with something called music similarity scores. Could you walk us through what those are and why they matter?
Definitely. Yeah, this is a really, really fun one. So with all the country level data that we're able to bring in, we started looking at the songs that overlap in different countries and regions. And so, as an example of this, if we start with the United States, we can see that of the top 10,000 songs in Canada against the top 10,000 songs in the US, 75%, overlap. So there's 7,500 songs in Canada that you can find in the top 10,000 of the US. Now, as we start going down, you will see that India is actually at 12%. So there it's only, 1,200. Japan has 14% against the US. And what this is really showing is the differentiation between music markets. So you're going through our list of 47 countries, you can say that India is actually the most differentiated music market from the US. They have a lot of local content and things that is very different from ours. And so what I think is really, really interesting about this as well is that, using this, you could start to see where trigger countries exist. So if you're looking at countries that are similar in their musical makeup, you could see how a song could then move from one country to another.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at your own, you could say, okay, well, where would be a good market? What is showing similar signs to ours? And so that's how we came up with the similarity score.
And you could also see if, like, oh my gosh, my song's taking off in India or Japan, like maybe it's going to have a lot more global potential than I thought if it can break through there.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And along with Japan, you could start looking like, okay, well, what lines up with Japan? How could I move to another country, or what could be a jumping region? And then the only other thing that I wanted to mention about this is that, we do see that, kind of going back to the US and the Canada example, that a lot of this is driven by language, which comes from the title that you pointed out. That a lot of what ties these areas together is language, makes it easier to jump. But it's a really, really fascinating thing to start diving into and start pulling that out to see how music can travel globally.
One other interesting point is you call it collaboration generation. You looked at how collaborations between artists, like in the same genre or across genres, play out with listeners of different age groups. So, not surprisingly, hip hop is kind of the source of this interest in collaboration and kind of sharing audiences and sharing artistic visions and worlds, but it's spreading to all sorts of other genres, and people of different ages have different reactions to that. Could you walk us through a few of those insights that you found there?
Yeah, definitely. So this is a really, really fun one, and it's interesting to look at, because one of the things that we've noticed is that over the last several years, the amount of collaborations in the top 10,000 tracks is going up. If you think about what's been going on, pandemic, artists and bands were not able to go out and tour together. So it's an interesting, thought that, one way to start getting in front of each other's fans was to then collaborate on streaming services and through tracks. And so it really lines up to, that would be a thing that artists would do when they can't go out and get in front of them. But to your point about, different genres and different genre fans and how open they are to collaborating, we have seen that hip hop rap fans, 83% of the fans of that genre like it when their top favorite artists collaborate with another. Latin fans comes in at 79%, and then you have some other genres, electronic dance and pop, coming in after that. The one thing that we did think that was really, really interesting is, when this comes from our market research, and our research team is what pulled this out, is that boomers in general, they actually were the least open to artists collaborating. And we did think that was an interesting fact as well. And just to give some context about that, they were by a pretty good measure. Gen X was actually the second least open at 71%, and then boomers were at 63%.
Wow. It's just I think, like a lot of things, like smartphones and Facebook, maybe the boomers will ease into collaborations and features in their favorite music.
Well, that's actually, you do look at a song like Elton John and Dua Lipa, right? And so maybe that's sort of the way that, you can start reaching, the boomer group in terms of these collaborations, because, we also saw that was one of the top collaborations of the year. And it was the top in its format of dance electronic. So, is that a way to start bringing in those, an audience that might not be as receptive, but you pair those together? And I don't know about you, but I heard that song in so many different settings. It was ubiquitous. It was all over the place.
That's awesome. So I'm also curious what you think. This is asking you to be a little bit of a fortune teller. So forgive me if this isn't appropriate to your role, but what do you think? Will this collaboration trend continue? I'm thinking just from the songwriting side and how publishing credits have multiplied for major hits. And it's already happening kind of on the songwriting side in the studio. Will it continue on the master side?
I think it will, because I think it is bringing success in this area. I think that let's look at the Latin genre, which has done a lot of collaborations for a while. There have been a lot of collaborations and getting in front of each other's fans and being able to really build awareness for themselves as artists, by doing that. And so I think that there is a little bit of a blueprint there with the Latin genre in particular, and obviously rap, hip hop, and other genres too. But the ones that have really been doing this for a while, and that, is what we're seeing through the pandemic, is that Latin is also one of the fastest growing genres. Them in country were a couple of the fastest growing. And so I think that there is a blueprint for success and an ability to get in front of more fans. And I think that because of that, you could definitely see this continue as pairs of fans are into it, and has also been, successful.
It's also such a great discovery mechanism. So nowadays you can just click and be like, oh, I like this person singing on this track. What else have they done? I've done that numerous times and found a bunch of music that I really, really liked that I never would have known how to find any other way. So I think especially for mid-tier and emerging artists, it's such a helpful way to find fans that are really into what you do.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I totally agree. And I started thinking about, different subgenres that collaborate a lot, and that ability to really build awareness overall for all the artists through it.
Yeah, like my personal favorite, Outrun and Synthwave. There's just the collaborations are basically the only really good way to find your next favorite track. So anyway, maybe I admitted a little bit too much there. Okay, so where I want to ask you a little bit about where you see where we are right now, and just in general in terms of music innovation. What do you think are some of the strongest trends and influences from your perspective in the world of music innovation? And you're looking at data, you're looking at how people are actually listening to music, why they're listening to certain things or buying things in a certain format. Where are you seeing some of the most exciting moments where innovation is happening or might happen?
So I think that, I think that a lot of it is where we're able to track data from, I think is an amazing innovation. When I started looking at a lot of the stories that have been coming out, and the ability to start diving in on a market level to see where something started bubbling. I want to call out a recent example that, the New York Mets pitcher, Edwin Diaz, he comes out to a certain song. And this is the song Narco by Blaster Jacks and Timmy Trumpet. It was released in 2017. And it had been, streaming at roughly, 100 to 130,000 streams a week, give or take. Well, in late July, it started taking off. And, between the week ending 7/21 and the week ending 8/11, streams had actually grown up to 1.2 million a week. Digital song sales had jumped 5,700% from 60 a week to over 3,500.
Wow.
And so what you start looking at, in some of the innovations around like being able to index things, and you're like, okay, well, yeah, New York is obviously the leader here, and it's 3.5 times the next closest market. And so I think a lot of the innovations that we can see now is where these true points of music discovery are.
Amazing.
And so you can start kind of going down the rabbit hole a little bit, like I probably just did.
I love it.
But I think that the ability to start getting a very, very good glimpse and view into what the consumer and the behavioral aspects are, when you can start matching, intent from the consumers, you can start matching, the market indices to be able to see where something is growing. I think that the innovations around that level of data has been really, really powerful. So you can start saying, okay, this is why it happened. And, does that then help build your strategies for other places? So on the data side, I think that that's really, really a critical and great innovation.
I wanted to ask you, what do you guys think was happening? Were people Shazamming the track in the stadium or on a broadcast, or how were New Yorkers getting turned on to Narco?
So I think that it has a couple of different things. I think that, I think that people inside of the stadium, I think that people tuning in on TV, I think that, people start hearing it. Obviously it's wrapped up in their own fandom for the Mets, but then it's also speaking to musical fandom. I think that those are coming together there. And so it started bubbling out of this entrance music for the pitcher, for Edwin Diaz, who's the closer. So he comes in at the ninth when emotions are high.
Nice.
And I think that it really just starts hitting on all of these really, basic fundamental levels, and people just kind of took it and ran with it.
I really love how music is in people, like how music moves people's hearts in so many different places and in so many different ways. It's always makes me glad to be alive. Okay. All right. So I want to get a little bit sci-fi with you in the last moments we have here. And what I mean by that is I want you to imagine an ideal near future music industry. What do you see?
That's a great question. So I definitely see more and more ways of music discovery. I think that also what we just kind of spoke to is, hey, I heard something. Now I have access to it. I think that in the near future, I think we'll see, new ways for engagement around fandom. One of the things that we were able to pull out and was in our mid-year webinar that we recently did was that cassette sales are rising. And that's a really, really fun and that's a cool thing. And it did double from 2020 to 2021. And we're talking actually about a jump from 173,000 to almost 350,000 cassettes sold in a year.
What?
And, I think that, and that's a great, great, fun story. It plays in nostalgia. But I think what it also shows is that in music, there is still a very, very big place for super fans and either a physical product or, pieces of merch. So I think that, when we start seeing those sorts of things spike, I think that shows that interest for that sort of fandom to have something to hold on to. I also think that, new ways of engagement with Web3 and NFTs for immersive experiences and expression of fandom, I think that that's going to, as that whole space continues to develop, I think that there will be ways that maybe, we're not even considering right now in how people are using NFTs to really, really build and allow fans in. One thing I wanted to call out is our research team is actually currently in field with a spotlight research project for NFTs, metaverse, and gaming that is out, this fall in September, and really, really looking at the awareness, engagement, and attitudes around there. So I think that is a major place. And then also, I really think that more access to more music globally is going to be, a really, really big thing as people are able to have new services in emerging markets and things like that. And all of a sudden, the world's music is at the fingertips of so many more people. I think that will continue to break down barriers and also allow, musicians to and artists to start reaching fans in places that, maybe never seemed possible.
And make the coolest musical hybrids that anyone has ever dreamed of.
I really think so.
I think so too.
These emerging markets where there's more access to more music and more sounds, I think it's going to be great. And I think that it's going to be a really, really, really fun world for music.
Wonderful. So everyone, Jamie just talked about an upcoming report. And if you want to hear more of this kind of amazing data storytelling, deep diving, rabbit holing, all the fun stuff we've been able to do very briefly here, we will be holding a webinar with Luminate very soon after the Music Tectonics conference. The date is still TBA, but we'll keep everyone posted. And all Music Tectonics conference badge holders will be invited to the data extravaganza. I'm doing some scare quotes right now, which no one can see, but it will be really, really amazing. And we'll fill you in on what the exact content and format will be, but it will feature a ton of Luminate's data and trend spotting. But for now, thank you so much, Jamie, for taking the time. And I really, really enjoyed talking about data with you.
Thank you. It's been great to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Music Tectonics. If you like what you hear, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We have new episodes for you every week. Did you know you can dig deeper into all our episodes with the show notes at musictectonics.com. While you're there, look for the latest about our annual conference, sign up for our newsletter to get updates, or get the Music Tectonics app for music tech news. Everything we do explores seismic shifts that shake up music and technology the way the Earth's tectonic plates cause quakes and make mountains. Connect with Music Tectonics on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and find me, Dmitry Vitsa, if you can spell it, on LinkedIn. Bye-bye!
You're listening to Music Tectonics.